Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Casual Sports Podcast. I'm Matt
I'm
Morris. And there he is. He's here. He's here.
Yeah, I was switching tabs there late, and I hit the back button as I switched back over.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I don't know what you said there, but I'm Alec Brennan. It's Matt Morrison's Casual Sports Podcast on your sports network.
I just brought it in for a minute. That's all I did.
All right, well, we're going to be recapping all the games going on along the bottom of your screen here from this past Friday, Week 10 of the regular season. Matt, we had some pretty good games, some pretty not good games. So why don't we just get right into it? Final week of the regular season, playoff hopes on the lives for a lot of these teams. And Wyndham was the first one that we saw. I'll say first one on the list here to go over. They did all they could to give themselves an opportunity at the postseason. They beat North Baltimore 39-8, finished their season off at 4-5, and earned themselves a postseason spot in Division 7 Region 25, as they have been named number 14 and will take on Danville in the first round of the playoffs. So it's going to be an uphill battle for them, sure, but I think you have to like the way they were able to finish this season, some ups and downs all the way through. Not exactly the easiest of schedules, but they get the final game and they give themselves an opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. And that's the main goal. You want to do just enough to get yourself that opportunity. And, Danville, I mean, that's going to be an uphill battle against Danville. I mean, they're one heck of a team. It's loading. But, 8-2, but Wyndham's 4-5. So it's like they're gonna need a huge upset, honestly, to come in here and beat Danville.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to need a lot of upsets, and I mean, that's what happens when you're a 14 seed. No one's going to expect much out of you, but at the same time, no one's expecting you to do anything. And I think that's kind of been the thing of the season for
you have nothing to lose,
right? And when you got nothing to lose, the game doesn't become easier. It becomes almost, actually, in my opinion, I think the game becomes harder when you're the underdog and no one's expecting anything of you and you have nothing to lose. I think that game becomes harder because now you got to prove it to yourself that you're worth it. You're fighting more of an internal battle while also fighting an external battle at the same time. And, it's kind of been the story for this Wyndham team all season. They won the games they were supposed to, and they lost the games they were probably supposed to as well. So going into this postseason, it's not going to be easy for them. I'm not quite sure what to expect, but finishing the season off with a 31-point victory over North Baltimore, only allowing one touchdown in the first quarter, shutting them out for the next three, I think it's going to go a long way for this Wyndham team in building their confidence to potentially pull off that first-round upset.
Yes, I like the potential in there. I like the big blowout win. That's definitely a confidence boost to go into the playoffs. Your record is you got that big win, and now here you are. So,
well, we had another team fighting for their playoff lives. Unfortunately, they just miss out on the cut after 4 straight losses to finish the year. It's the Boardman Spartans as they went down to Canfield 35-6 here in Week 10. Canfield, obviously, they have had their spot secured for a while now. Boardman needed this. Fortunately, they dropped. They just fall out. They finished 19th in the polls in Division 2, Region 5. It was a tough region this year. They just miss out. I mean, you look at the teams that missed out here. It's Warren G. Harding, Shaker Heights, Boardman, Twinsburg, Ellett, Firestone. I mean, Kenmore, Garfield. There's some big names in there that had some down seasons that just missed out on the cut. Boardman, kind of one of those along the same lines. Record almost the same as last year, but remember, it's first year under a new coach for Boardman. So I think if you look at it that way, hey, you were basically one game out of making the postseason in your first year with a new head coach. You put up some good numbers. You're looking for some younger stars. They played quarterback in DiMarzio all season long at quarterback, and he's kind of been that focal point I think they're going to lean on here in the next few seasons. So overall, obviously you don't make the postseason. That's the ultimate goal. First year for Andre Elliott, and I think it's going to be a part of me. That's not their head coach. It's their assistant. But first year over there, I think it's an important building block for years to come for this program if they want to get things turned back around and get Spartan football back to where it's going to be. It's E.J. Dota who went over there.
Yeah.
He came over from Harding. That's what it was.
Oh. Well, he definitely knows how to
Harding. He was
coach football then, if you're at Harding for a long time.
Yeah, he spent 4 seasons with Harding. Then he took over at West Branch in 2011. I don't know if he played last year, or he coached last year. But yeah, first season under Dota. They had some quality wins along the way, and they challenged teams along the way. So I think while you're not exactly pleased with the outcome, I think you're pleased on the direction the ship has been pointed in.
Yes, absolutely. And 4-6, it's not bad. I mean, like you said, first year under a new head coach. Well, you said he coached at Harding. You cut out
at one point, yeah, about 10 years ago.
Well, okay. Well, anybody that coaches at Harding knows how to coach, especially 10 years ago, because that's when they were really good. So, I mean, going in here, Boardman, I mean,
Matt, you there? Oh, he's frozen hard here. So I'll just take over while we get him reloaded in here. But, on the Boardman side, like I said, they're going in the right direction for Canfield. I mean, this is the season they're expecting to have. This is the direction they're expecting to be pointed in. Here we go, Matt. You want to finish off your point that you froze hard?
Yeah. But, I mean, 4-6 season, it's all right. I mean, just go into next season, restart. It's not really a big deal.
Yeah. And Matt, for Canfield, this is the season they expected to have with the players that they do have. It's an experienced group over there, and they matched expectations, and they have themselves a really, really good playoff spot now, sitting number 2 in Division 3, Region 9. They're going to get a round 1 matchup against New Philadelphia, who's not going to be an easy team by any stretch. I mean, it is a team with a winning record over there, but they don't really have an offense or a defense that's going to keep up with this Canfield squad. And you look over at their schedule and the games that they've won. I mean, it was a 10-7 game over Lexington. It was a 3-7 football team. They have losses to Steubenville and Worcester, games they were both shut out in. So when they've gone up against hard competition, they didn't play well. However, they also beat Dover in their last matchup of the season. So I don't think it's going to be an easy round 1 game. Probably one of the more difficult matchups when you go 2 versus 15 to open these playoffs this coming Friday.
I think so too. I mean, 6-4, I know some of the teams on their schedule are a little questionable, but I mean, you're 6-4, you're a 15 seed. I mean, we've seen it in multiple areas. I mean, I automatically think of Oral Roberts in basketball. Sorry, that's the only one I think of.
Yeah, no, it's fair.
But it could happen now. You never know. It's playoffs. You're there. I mean, look at Cleveland. I mean, I know they lost first round, but they took a heavily favored Yankees team to 5 games. So you never know what can happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think really, Matt, on the other side of that, look at the Phillies. I mean,
yeah, that's another example.
Worst seed in baseball. Now they got Houston in the World Series.
They turned it around. They're the Braves last year. They made they didn't make any midseason accusations, but they fired their coach and started fresh, and they significantly got better after he was gone. So,
well, Matt, speaking of team that significantly got better, how about Brookfield? After game 1, they lose 52-14. They win 9 straight games. However, Matt, Brookfield does not get 2 home games. They fell in at 5.
That is disrespectful. To put them on the road.
You look at it too, and Dalton's the team that got above them at 8-2. And you look at Brookfield, they won every game they physically could have. But at the end of the day, what I think hurt them most, Springfield, they had a good end of the season. They didn't start well. Western Reserve didn't have a good season. Liberty, they turned around. They make the postseason, and we're going to talk about them here soon.
Oh, okay.
Campbell had a bad year. Crestview had a bad year. Newton Falls had a bad year. LeBray had a bad year. Their entire schedule had a bad year this season outside of Firstland and Garfield. And then champion this final week, they completely fell off, finishing 3-7. So what really hurt Brookfield was not that they won every game, it's that their opponents weren't having the years that needed to happen for Brookfield to get that 4th spot. And I know Randy Clark's going to be a little disappointed because he told us that, hey, he wants 2 postseason games in Brookfield. But at the same time, it's one of those matchups you did everything you could have.
Yeah. And, I mean, yeah, they played lesser opponents, but look what they did.
Right.
None of those games were close. The Springfield game, I mean, still 27-14. I mean, that's still a big win. I mean, look at everybody else, man. 47-3 against Reserve, 47-6 against Liberty, 52-13 against Camel, 53 against Crestview, 34 against Newton Falls. Yeah. And they repeated
at the end of the
that.
day, Matt, it all comes down to if they had put probably a little bit more into that game against Ursuline, if they had played as well as they did the rest of the season against Ursuline, they probably don't win. But I think
if they play them again now, it'd be different. I think it'd be different if they played again now.
I think it would be too. I think they'd be much closer. I mean, we talked to Randy after that game, and he kind of was telling us the whole season. That Ursuline game, it taught us a lot of things we didn't know about ourselves. And they really have shown that they have become a far superior team. I think if the same Brookfield team that went up against Ursuline in week 1 had gone up against Garfield in week 9, Brookfield would not have won that game.
No.
But those change-ups they had to make after seeing Ursuline helped them to win that game, and I think it's going to help them to make a nice playoff run. Matt, the unfortunate part is they're on the same side of the bracket as Kirtland, and they'd have to meet in the regional semifinals.
That's if they get past Dalton.
Yes, they'd also have to get past
Dalton's good too.
You start with Pymatuning Valley, who obviously is great, but, I mean, they've had an all right season.
I'll be on that game. So.
Yeah, you will. And then they go likely into Dalton. And then in the regional semis, they have to match up against Kirtland wherever that game will get played.
Neutral.
Right, in a neutral site.
How far is Dalton? That far?
Ooh, I don't actually know. I've never heard of Dalton outside of this year, and I have not looked it up. Let's see where this falls. All right, it's out in Wayne County. Let's see how far away.
An hour.
Let's go from my location here. All right. Well, Matt, you're going southwest of Akron. You're almost in Worcester. It's west of Canton.
Oh, boy.
So you might have yourself in for a long drive in round 2.
Oh, yeah.
You know what, Matt? You can come on down to Boardman for me and Valley Christian in round 2. We'll do the rematch at Cuyahoga Heights in round 2.
Yeah. And Boardman. That'll be nice.
That'll be a little bit easier of a drive. Maybe we'll switch for that round. Give you a little bit better of a drive, because I think that's even longer for you. It's at about an hour and 10 for me. It's probably an hour and a half, hour 40 for you.
Yeah,
you have fun with that, Matt.
Oh yeah.
But on the other side of this with Champion, it's an unfortunate finish because they had a promising start to the season. I mean, with some close games in there, and it all really just came crashing down at the end of this year. And they just barely missed Division 5 postseason. They finished as an 18 seed thanks to what Liberty did to end out the year with their strong run. Liberty actually pushed Champion out of the postseason, so it was a bad finish for them. They might be a little relieved they're not going to the postseason because they clearly have some problems they need to figure out going into this offseason. I hope they can turn around because it's a Champion program, Matt, that has been very strong. I don't expect more than one down year from this team, so I'm expecting on the bounce.
I talked to their coach before this Brookfield game, and he said after that Libre win, the week before we called the Newton Falls game, and he said after that, next week in practice, they looked like a totally different team. Like something got into them and something bugged them. I don't know. Something happened. I don't know. It just
kind of what we've been speculating the last couple of weeks on this show. I mean, we've been like, something is very different about this team, and whether it was lack of confidence or something else that got into them, it was definitely a strange turnaround.
It was
this team.
Yeah, well, this game.
Speaking of a team that needs to find a way to turn it around, I don't know what they're going to do, but Youngstown East, they dropped the Youngstown City Classic to Cheney 34-0. I thought ultimately it was not the worst game for East. They forced a number of turnovers. However, Cheney did not even play their starting quarterback in this game in Matt Jones. They allowed Drew Galt to take the reins, give the young guys some work. Their backup quarterback, which I kind of liked. I mean, they didn't need Jones to go out there, risk an injury. And
No.
obviously, they had a strong enough defense. They didn't need to. East was held to under 100 yards in this game in total. I think they turned it over 3 times. But I think one thing to look forward to with East as they move forward, their defense is actually really good. They got burned on a couple of deep balls from Cheney, but really for the most part, I thought they played for an 0-9 team, now 0-10. I thought they played about much better than I think you could have asked many teams to go up against Cheney at this point in the season and keep it competitive again against a backup quarterback. But I mean, they were forcing turnovers of their own. They were trying things, and they, despite the fact that they were down 28-0 at halftime, they didn't quit on this game like they probably could have. I mean, they could have run out of here with their tails between their legs. They could have forfeited the game. They could have not even showed up. But they didn't. They had, I think, 21 kids active for this game, and having 21 kids against 40 plus for Cheney, I thought it was one hell of a performance. And, go East for showing up. And for a little while there, they were giving Cheney a shot.
Yes,
Cheney
they were. Absolutely. I'm going to make a little bit of a bold statement here. Cheney's playoff game is against Alliance, and Alliance is no pushover team.
One heck of a start, man. You get a 2-3 loss Alliance in round 1.
You might see an upset. We might see them get knocked out. I don't know. The Ursuline game, they hang in tough, 30-27. I think they got a lot taken out in that game. Luckily, look at the teams they played after Ursuline. Harvey, Howland, and I mean Harding. The record didn't show it. Harding took it to them pretty good, and they finally snapped out of it in that game and did a huge run in the end and finally barely take it. I don't know. I think they caught off guard a little bit. I think they put everything into that Ursuline game and they didn't win.
Well, man,
I think they're dwelling on it.
They had to put everything into both of those games, Canfield and Ursuline back to back. And I do think that has impacted their finish. Because in reality, I know it was their backup quarterback, but Drew Galt still has one heck of an arm. They probably should have hung 50 on East in this game. And I don't know if they were taking it easy, what it was. I know East had a couple turnovers, but they forced turnover on downs. This was not the Cheney team that people saw go up against Canfield and Ursuline and go toe-to-toe with them. I think you're right to an extent that they're a little bit off now in what their ceiling is. It may have gone down because of 2 very hard games, but I think you're potentially onto something with Alliance maybe pulling this upset in round 1 of the postseason. And for me, it's hard to say it's even an upset because Alliance is an 8.
Yeah, they're evenly matched
as a 12 seed. Yeah. This might be the best 12 seed out there. And their only loss is West Branch and Uniontown Lake. Well, I'm sorry. Uniontown Lake is 1 loss. West Branch is 1 loss. I don't know how this team fell that far. I mean, I think it goes back to the strength of schedule of that point. But they also have wins over a team that just went toe-to-toe with West Branch and Salem. They beat Carrollton. They beat a postseason contender, top 6 team, I believe, in Canton Central Catholic. Alliance is going to be one heck of a match. That's probably game of the week for this first round of the postseason on YSN.
I think so, yeah.
It's definitely a game to watch out for.
Oh yeah. So they got to be on the
next one up here. Probably a couple teams to watch: Edgewood and Lakeside as they go into the postseason. Edgewood gets the win here in the final week of the season, a much needed one too. They had to beat Lakeside, coming off a loss to Kirtland. They had been sliding here at the end of the season, but with this win, Edgewood makes it up to a 9 seed. They were teetering on the edge of not making the postseason, but they jump in the final week thanks to this win over Lakeside. And with Lakeside, they end up as a 15 seed. So both teams made the postseason. Not going to be easy matchups. Lakeside has to go up against Riverside in the first round, and Edgewood, they will have to go up against Struthers. So, I mean, going to be hard matchups for both of them, both on the road for them. But I think these are 2 very competitive teams that are going to give it one heck of a shot, especially with that really rough conference they play in. They should be ready for games like this. And remember, Lakeside went toe-to-toe against Geneva this season and nearly upset them back in week 4. So this is a team we know in Lakeside that can play, and they were 1 win off from being a 7-3 team. Same, with Edgewood. They didn't quite have the close games against Geneva, Perry, Jefferson, or Kirtland, but they managed the rest of their schedule very well. And I think both of them can potentially do some damage here in the first round, pulling off some upsets.
I think so too. And Struthers, I'm so happy Struthers got in. They're gonna upset somebody. I'm not saying they're going all the way to state, but they're gonna ruin somebody's season. I guarantee it. I'd put money on it. Not that I can.
Let me just take a look here. So first off, obviously Edgewood. Round 2, Matt, they'd have to go into West Branch to pull it off. And West Branch has been touted here on YSN as the runaway favorite for Division IV football.
So and that's so perfect for them to lose. They're far away favorite. They're coming in heavily favored. Here comes Struthers. Who cares? We don't care.
I really like West Branch. That's what happened.
You called them.
I did. I saw him against Gerard, and that is
ruled Gerard, and Gerard is good.
Yeah, that's a team in Struthers. I think they got some real momentum rolling behind them.
They're scrappy.
They are. Gerard a 3 seed, so you could see a rematch at some point between them if some upsets can go along for that Struthers team. But Matt, both this Lakeside and Edgewood team, I mean, what a great game to finish out the year for them. I think this was 4-4-0's game, or 4-4-0 in goals game up there, and they picked a really great one to finish out the season in the regular season. 4-point game, came down to the wire in a game I think we all expected to be really close. These were 2 evenly matched teams, and they played up to the hype that we were kind of touting behind them all year. I think he's frozen again. So our next game, LeBray and Campbell. I just gotta say this is a great face right there for Matt. I gotta screenshot that real quick. That's going on our Twitter page for sure. But LeBray and Campbell, what a shocker this was here in the final week of the season. I don't know what happened here with Campbell, but something went drastically wrong for the Red Devils here in Week 10. I know they weren't having the best of seasons, but this should have been about a runaway Game 3 as possible for them. And the fact that they dropped this one 34-8 to LeBray, I think kind of shocking. And, well, neither one of these teams really had a shot at the postseason. I think it's, now kind of a season that you look at for Campbell and you go, what was good about it? Yeah, it's one of those years that it's all about the rebuild for him. And obviously Andrew King is doing all they can to get this program back to where they should be and where they have been in the past. But I think right now there's a long hill to climb for this Campbell team. Line play has gotten better, but what I really think they're missing is a superstar. They just don't have them. I think you look at their schedule and you see who they went up against this year. And with Valley Christian, I mean, a ton of superstars there. With Lowville, a bunch of stars. Brookfield, stars. Garfield, stars. Yeah, every team I think you see at this level, you have to have one of those guaranteed bona fide stars that can carry a game or you can go to in the clutch. And from what I saw out of Campbell this year when I called him, especially in Week 1 against Valley, and I know that was a long time ago, it wasn't in the game against Liberty. They just had nobody on that team that looked like they wanted to be the guy or could be the guy. They have a couple guys I think that want to, but I don't think they are. And I think that's something that you just kind of have to hope falls into your lap, and that's how you make great teams is you get one of those players that can change games and turn things around for you. But in the meantime, I mean, Andrew King's just got to keep building this program in the right direction and hope he gets one of those guys to kind of fall in place. But it's a season for Campbell. I don't think we really look back on and you go, there was a positive you can take away. I mean, their wins came against the falling apart champion and East Palestine. At both times, it was close. And then you lose your final game of the year. It was a season for Campbell that they probably will look to forget. And I think same goes for LeBray. It was the start of a rebuild for him. And I think getting a win here in the final week, it's something to build off of going into the offseason that I think they're going to kind of have plastered on that wall this whole year of, hey, you got one. Let's go out next year, 2023 season. Start it with 1. Then you grab 2. This is a LeBray football team that we all expect to make the turnaround. Maybe not get back to 11-2 like they were last year, but I don't think we expect them to stay down for very long. It's a team that typically we see over 500. I mean, the last losing season was 2019. They went 3-7 after a 10-2 year. But really, I mean, you continue to go back before that, and their last losing season before that 2019 year came all the way back in 2012. So this is a LeBray program. I think we all expect to find its bounce back sooner rather than later. It's just going to come down to, putting this new system in place, finding that new culture for this squad and see what comes out of it. Our next one up was one heck of a matchup in Week 10. Garfield, after losing their last game in Week 9 to Brookfield, playing host to the Leopards of Liberty. And I thought that this was a fairly good game. I thought it was a great game for Garfield, but I thought it was a pretty good game for Liberty. And I think it showed a lot of things, mainly the defense for Liberty. I mean, it played, I'll say, pretty good. It could have been a little better. They allowed 2 pass completions, and both went for touchdowns on 62 yards between the both of them. And obviously, they could not stop the ground game, which is obviously going to hurt them here in the postseason. But I thought ultimately not a bad end for Liberty. And with their final streak here, as we reintroduce Matt, we're talking Liberty versus Garfield Week 10 matchup. I'm saying, though, I think this Liberty team, they did a great job turning around the end of this season, finding a couple wins with their new star quarterback and Lawrence Watson. I would love to say going into the postseason, they did earn a 16 seed. I would love to say here in Division 5 that I think they can pull off what would likely be the biggest upset in OHSAA history if they can beat South Range in round 1. However, I don't know if they can pull it. I think they have
a lot of people mad.
That would make a lot of people mad. Liberty would become the bad guy of the Valley. I mean, they would have to live up to that name. Personally, I want to see it. I want to see Liberty take down them Raiders. That's ultimate underdog.
It looks like Garfield did to them, though. Oof.
Right, and that's what worries me, because you look at South Range and they have such a strong running game and a good pass game that a one-dimensional Garfield cooked. I mean, they were cooking. This is what Denver was hoping Russell Wilson was going to give them, and instead, obviously Denver sucks. But this Garfield,
better.
This Garfield is what everyone expected Denver to be this season, just cooking everybody they get their hands on. Outside of JFK and Brookfield, I am worried maybe a little bit about what Garfield is going to do in the postseason, because obviously they had 2 hard games on the schedule and they lost both of them. So I am concerned about that here in the postseason, as they will take on Conneaut in round 1. I don't know if they get out of round 1. It's on the road for them. I don't have a ton of faith there. Obviously, I mean, Garfield undefeated on the road this season. They have not lost when they've traveled away from home. But I think it's a dangerous spot for them. I think both of these teams are in danger in round 1 of the postseason. But I'd like to see upsets for both of them to get it done and move on.
I think so, too.
And not just that, you look at this division here in Division 5, and it's going to be a very difficult run for whether or not this is Liberty or South Range that comes out of it, likely Liberty. But you'd either have Conneaut or Garfield in round 2. Then you get to regional semis. And, I mean, look at the list. Okay, Harrison Central, a 6-4 12 seed. Norway, Matt, which you and I saw a couple of years back, they're not too shabby either. They're 7-3. They're a 5 seed. Cardinal Mooney, who obviously has had a good finish to the year, they're a 13 seed, not likely to win around 1. But then undefeated Edison at the 4 spot. Then if they get past that, well, then you either have Garaway, Burton Berkshire, Perry, or Fairless. And I think this is going to be one heck of a race. And while you look at South Range probably as the favorite here, it's not an easy path for them to get out of this bracket. And we'll obviously talk South Range a little bit later, but I think right now when you look at Liberty, even if they pull an upset in round 1, they would have to pull massive upsets in every round to make this run.
Yeah. Massive upsets is probably an understatement, too.
Well, I mean, you look at Garfield. Well, Matt, you look at Garfield beating Conneaut round 1, South Range round 2, Edison round 3. I mean, right there, I mean, you're combining what? 28 wins to 2 losses. Combined opponent record of 28-2 if a team like Garfield can run this through and make it. That only puts them in the regional final. That's not even to get to states. That is just a regional final. Likelihood, then you go probably 36-4 as their combined opponent's record if they can go all the way to a state semifinal, in which they'd probably have to take on another undefeated region Division 5 team.
That's rough.
And the same story is going to go for South Range too. I mean, no matter who they play, that opponent record is going to be astronomical. And to this point in the season, none of these teams have played that hard of a schedule. You will not see as hard of a 4-game stretch anywhere else on this team schedule, any team schedule. If you're playing in this region, maybe a couple others, you get a couple other easy games to start, some 6-4, some 7-3s. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get these 8-2s in 9-1, 10-0 teams really anywhere else on the schedule this season. It's going to be very hard. We're going to see what these teams are made of.
We're going to see what a lot of teams are made of.
We did not see what Louisville was made of here in the final week of the season. They dropped to Lindsley 45-19. It's Lindsley. Who cares? I mean, it was a game for Louisville that I don't believe really had much of an impact on where they were going to
I would have loved to see Valley play Lindsley. See how that
No, I don't want to see that. But Louisville is fell down to an 8
run on
the edge. But, it's a game that Lindsley was going to win. They had a strong advantage. They're playing 20-year-olds out there. The only reason I would want to see Valley go up against Lindsley is because I want to see Jontrell Mixon run over some grown men. Because that's really good. But everyone else on that team, that's a little small. No one needs to see, Jordan Peak get crumbled over by a 25-year-old lineman.
Yeah, that's true.
That's not helping anybody here in the Valley.
The
season comes to a close for them, Matt. They had a pretty good year. I would say they didn't play all that bad. They had a tough schedule. I mean, Perry, Lake, Hoover, Poland, and Steubenville. It was a rough year. Not many people would have gotten through this schedule. And I would say to come out 3-7 like they did, I would say ultimately a pretty good year. They got the upset against Green. They beat NDCL in double overtime, and they beat Canal Thornton's Northwest. And I think ultimately you go, yeah, maybe not the season they wanted to have, but not many teams would have had a good season against that slate. I mean, likelihood is not many teams would have finished over 500 against those teams. Lisbon, the next team we're talking about, what a confusing year this has been for them because, they win the games they were supposed to and they lose the ones they were supposed to up until the final week of the year where they go up against 2-win Columbiana, get absolutely dominated 27-6, and now Columbiana wins their 3rd straight game to finish off the year. They aren't in the postseason. They didn't want to be in the postseason. They opted out. Not that they were getting invited, but they had opted out a couple of weeks ago. But you look at David Anderson in Lisbon, and I think you really just have to scratch your head at how this season ended for him with this loss to Columbiana because they had beaten every, I'll say it, lesser team on their schedule and lost to every team better than them. It was about what you asked for as a coach, and now you finish with the ultimate average record of 5-5.
Oof.
And you look at who they have to play now in round 1, and it's St. Paul, a team that has eliminated Southern from the last 2 years of the postseason, and will likely have another matchup against Southern this year, except now, if St. Paul can beat Lisbon, St. Paul has to go into Southern, which is when I called the Southern Valley Christian game. That's all the coaches wanted. They wanted St. Paul to have to come down to the Wigwam and play in that environment so they could send them packing like they had been the last 2 years when Southerns had to go on the road up into Norwalk, and then they've been sent packing.
Yeah.
So for the 3rd straight year, they're going to get this postseason matchup, and it should be a good one. Unless Lisbon can pull some kind of upset, which would be astronomical. Personally, I don't think they get past the 8-3 Flyers.
We'll see what happens, though. Rick Dale will be on the call. He's a legend.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be saying a ton of great things out. That's a long drive for him too in round
1.
Yeah, in Norwalk if they send him all the way out there. But when I called him with Valley Christian, he was really emphasizing the rebuilding process of this team. So I think they're going to be talking a lot about next season on that broadcast.
Yeah.
Next game up, nearly a huge upset in this final round, final week of the regular season. Mineral Ridge and Waterloo clashing, and it ends 28-20 in favor of the Rams after they lose last week to Lowellville. They had a bit of a letdown against Waterloo, who was looking to find some momentum after 4 straight losses, now make it 5, and they just missed out on the postseason. They were hunting, Matt. They were hunting. They wanted that postseason spot.
Yeah, they did.
All down to 23, but they could have had an opportunity. You look at the teams that did make it here in Region 21. Independence was 4-6. That would have been Waterloo's record as well, and they could have potentially gotten that boost in as also.
Yeah, I mean, Waterloo, tough run, but they fought to the end. So once you know you fought to the end, you put your all into it, I'd be satisfied. Yeah.
I would be as well, and I thought it was a satisfying victory. Satisfying loss for them. You fought all the way. For Mineral Ridge, they don't get a home game, which I think is going to be a little disappointing for this program. You had such a good year. You go 8-2, but ultimately, again, that's what we were talking about with Brookfield. The strength of schedule just wasn't there. You look at their opponents, and it's PV, who is a postseason team, but pretty far back. Orange didn't win. Newton Falls, down year. McDonald, down year. Springfield, they turned it around at the end, but it was a down year for them, and Ridge lost to them. Western Reserve, down year. Jackson Milton was an average year. Sebring had a bad year. Lowellville was the one good game on their schedule, and they lost. And then you had Ridge Waterloo this final week, who, again, they get a win, but it's not against really a team that's having one of their better seasons. So, again, it's that strength of schedule really came in to impact Mineral Ridge and where they fall. I do kind of like them, though, in round one. They have Canton Central Catholic, and I think it's a winnable game for them. I don't think it's one that you look at and you go, all right, higher seed's going to win. This is 6-4 Canton Central Catholic, who obviously has played some really good teams on their schedule in Perry, Norwayne, Southrange, Salem, Alliance. These last couple, that was early in the season. Late in the season, it got easy. Lutheran East, Lake Catholic, Liverpool, Jackson, and Aquinas to finish the year. So I think you got a bit of a fluff Central Catholic team out of Canton. I think it's a game Ridge can really go in and impose their will on.
I think so too.
Speaking of a team that got Mineral Ridge's will imposed on, Newton Falls, they fall to 3-7 after beating Campbell last week, but losing to Crestview this week. They lost 20-0. I must say, I was impressed with how Crestview finished out this season. An 0-3 start. It was rough. They get the big win over Campbell. They lose to Brookfield, which was going to be obvious. They beat LeBray, lose to an obvious game in Garfield. They beat Champion. Now they beat Newton Falls. And you look at their schedule and you go, I think I'm satisfied with how this year ran out for Crestview. Neither one of these teams are going to make the postseason, but I really think you have to be impressed with how Crestview finished. And I think conference here for Newton Falls, they get the win over St. John, close loss to Jackson Milton. They played Ridge pretty well. They get in a close dogfight against Champion. They lose to Garfield and Brookfield like everyone else. They beat LeBray. They were in a close game against Liberty. They beat Campbell, and then they lose here in the final week. Well, it could have gone better. I don't think these were bad seasons for either one of these teams. It's definitely a step in the process of rebuilding these groups, though, back to what they have been in the past. I think we both saw that they have some pretty good kids on these rosters that can help them push forward into next season.
I think so, too. I think they finished really strong here. I like this Crestview team. I honestly feel bad. What's going on here? Crestview's good. They don't play like this. This isn't the Crestview of old that made huge playoff runs, just 5-6 years ago. So, let me look. I'm in here.
Well, Matt, I want to point this out while you're looking that up. The one game that is coming back to bite Crestview the most is what would have been the matchup against Liberty that Liberty had to cancel due to COVID. And you look at that, Liberty hits the postseason because they don't play that game. Crestview finished 17th. If you go back and you go, all I needed was one more game, it would have come against Liberty, in Liberty, against a Division V opponent. And what looked like a game at the time, Crestview would have at least stood a chance in. And they don't get their shot at it. I think this is a season you really have to go back and you have to go in and you have to circle that game of what would have been against Liberty, because that probably would have been the shot that keeps Liberty out but puts Crestview in. It's probably the biggest what if of this season when you look around, especially when it comes to game cancelizations.
Yeah, I think so too. Oof.
Did you find that article or whatever?
No.
Okay. Well,
No.
let's move on to the next game then.
Yeah, go ahead.
Niles in week 10 gave the biggest shot ever against Girard. They just come out with a loss 33-35, and the Indians hang on, and now they have the third spot in the postseason with a round 1 matchup at home against NE8 rival Hubbard. That's going to be one heck of a matchup, but shout out to Niles for absolutely sticking it to Girard here in the final week. And I know Girard's playing without their starting quarterback who's been booked for the season, and now they're relying on sophomore third-string quarterback Dominic Talone, who, by the way, completed 65% of his passes in this game. Shout out to him for really stepping up. Not only that, this is Girard's third-string quarterback. Their second-string guy in Stephen Sims was up for Big Dog of the Valley after his 7-touchdown performance against Hubbard. And Talone loses the game to Struthers. They just get past Niles, and now it's a rematch to Hubbard. And it's a game that I think you really have to be cautious of. And I think it's a game Hubbard should be the favorite for.
I think so, too. Hubbard.
Unless this Girard team can get back some of their playmakers for this postseason run.
Yeah. Like, Girard. The main guy is Michael Palmer, I believe, for Girard.
Michael Palmer is the one doing it, but they lose their starting quarterback in Nick Bengala.
Oh, jeez.
He got knocked out in the South Range game. And since that, they lost the South Range.
They did with injuries last year.
Yeah, it's going to hurt. This is going to end their postseason because of injuries. Because Bengala goes down in South Range, they lose. They lose to Poland the week after. They get an epic performance from Sims, but then he goes down after a half against Struthers, in which they were, in a tied ball game at the halftime. Talone comes out in the second half, and they lose to Struthers in what was really his first opportunity of the season. And then you go up against Niles and you go this close. Their chances against Hubbard are slim to none, and Slim's almost out the door. Talone is going to have to be perfect against Hubbard. And this is a really good.
They might squeak by Hubbard. Hubbard's been down. They might get past Hubbard, I think.
Hubbard's a 6-4 team, Matt, and this NE8 has been brutal. They are a 6-4 14 seed.
Look what they did. South Range ran.
South Range ran over everyone. I don't care about that.
I know. But, they've been taking some beats. So, and they just played Girard a couple weeks ago.
With a different quarterback.
With the
starter.
Yeah.
And he's injured now.
So, it was 49-14.
And he had all 7 touchdowns.
Yeah, all 7 touchdowns. Oh, man. That's going to be different.
I think they said it was like 3 passing, 1 receiving, 3 rushing. It was an incredible game.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Now, don't come, but it put him up for Big Dog of the Valley, that performance against Hubbard.
Just hope that they get him back soon. Is it that bad of an injury?
I don't know. He got, because he had both touchdowns in the first half against Struthers when I was calling the game. They get to halftime, they come back out, and I see him standing on the sideline, but they took his helmet away. He wasn't allowed in for the second half. So if I had to speculate, which I know we're not really supposed to do, I would probably speculate an upper body injury, maybe a concussion.
Maybe.
If they took away his helmet,
that
was pretty clear
indication
in that he misses the next week. You probably don't think that, it was just, a little sprain here or there. It's clearly something, but, we obviously can't speculate too much on what it is. It has to be upper body because he was standing out there.
Yeah. Concussions have been big this year, too. I've seen a lot of them.
At all levels, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But go ahead.
Next game, to look at. Week 9, Poland goes down thanks to Struthers that have trusted the climb in these final 5 weeks and now have the longest winning streak in years. And it's been a bit of a revenge this so far for Struthers. And now they get to go up against Edgewood in round 1 of the postseason. I think it's one heck of a matchup. I like Struthers, though, to win it. I think they have been a phenomenal team this back half of the season. And so long as they avoid injuries that have derailed them the last 3 years, they have lost their starting quarterback at some point in the season. If they can avoid that injury this year, they're going to be just fine. And they got 2 guys that can play quarterback in Grizib and Najir Howard. So they have weapons this year, and that's something I think they've missed in past.
Yeah.
But I like him in round 1. They've had a great year. I can't wait to see what they can do. For Poland, they just lost to Jefferson the week prior. They lose to Struthers. They have a rematch against Jefferson in Jefferson this time. The one thing you're going to hear all week, it's hard to beat a team twice, but Jefferson probably knows how to get it done better than most because that's a very tough team up there. And I know the 4-4-0 and goal guys are going to be touting the Falcons this week for that.
Oh, yeah. I like that Jefferson team. They're always a competitive team. So it'll be fun to see them make a little run. They might get a couple games in there.
They might.
But
a team that, Matt, I think is going to get a couple, more than just a couple games. These Raiders of South Range, 28-0 over Hubbard, who we already said Hubbard's going to have to go play Gerard. And actually, I think I favor Hubbard to go into that game against Gerard, especially with the injury. What's that?
If they don't get Bengala back, because we don't know that timetable.
Right.
So, and he's gone. Okay, he'll be back in a second, I'm sure. He probably clicked the back button. But, I mean, Hunter Bengala, I was talking about him. I mean, our other co-host, Mike Wolfgang, went to Gerard, and he's been going to some of those games, and he's been talking about, like, they're not looking like the same without Hunter Bengala. But are you there? You there? No? He's here.
I'm here. My camera is broken, though.
Oh, jeez. What'd you do? Oh, I was gone again.
My entire device is crashing. Hold on. I'm going to just reload this page.
All right. We're hanging on here. Front stage, everybody. But I just like talking about these playoffs in general. High school football playoffs, it sets the stage. It really does. We talked about, I mean, we spent the whole show talking about it. It's insane. The games we're talking about, I mean, it's going to be one heck of a ride for all these YSN teams.
Okay, well, I can't use my camera, but I can use my audio.
All right, cool. We're rolling with it. I'm just talking about these playoffs, how they're pretty good. Like
South Range on this side, we've already talked a decent bit about Hubbard, but South Range, they're going to make a nice run. I'm still hoping maybe for a Liberty upset here in round 1. I don't know if it can happen. South Range has been so amazing this year that I don't think anyone is really going to doubt how far this team can go. They're going to go as far as they want to, and as far as momentum will carry them because they have all of it.
It sure do.
Speaking of a team with momentum, 50-0 this week. JFK dominated Ravenna Southeast, and now they go into the postseason against Fairport Harbor's Harding, and it's going to be an absolute blowout. I have no doubt this round.
Fairport Harding? I'm surprised they have a football team.
Hey, they made the postseason. They finished 4-6, so it's not that bad. And they won the final 2 games of the season against
they squeaked in
Beulah in back-to-back weeks. So
they just squeaked in.
Yes, they just squeaked in. A team though that we've liked kind of all year long, United. They lose the second game of the year, Matt, in one of the most anticipated matchups. Southern United ends 14-0 in favor of the Indians in the Wigwam.
Man, that's a tough battle. So Valley won the EOAC.
Valley clinched the EOAC last week, yes. But Valley didn't play on Saturday either, as East Palestine had to forfeit.
There's so many injuries. I was reading about it. I feel bad for them. I mean, it's been a tough ride for these Bulldogs. And
actually, they just canceled it. It was not counted as a forfeit.
Yeah, they just canceled it. They didn't forfeit. It was just canceled.
Valley, if they really wanted to, could have counted it as a forfeit. And taken it, but they didn't need to. Andy Hake's a good sportsmanship there. Didn't need to bury East Palestine first this season.
Yeah.
And because of it, Valley Christian finished third, and they got both home seeds, both home games for round 1 and 2. So they finished right where they needed to. And even with the win, it wouldn't have bounced them over Mogador.
No.
But, Southern United, this was a huge game for both teams. And, it's one that I think we look at now for United. If they had won, they would have had a home game. Now they have to go on the road in week 1 against Rootstown, which is not going to be an easy game for them. I think I might still like him because they have been very competitive, especially in the games they were favored to win. But, it's a final matchup that I don't particularly love for United. Southern, on the other hand, they get Greenwich South Central in week 1 at home, down in the Wigwam. It's going to be an electric environment. South Central
I
comes.
just want to put this out here. Do you just like saying the Wigwam?
It's the name of the stadium.
I mean, I just feel like you say it a lot. I like saying it.
It's one of the few stadiums around here that actually has a name, so I'm going to say it. How can you not?
I know.
Like, no one else goes around naming their stadiums with anything actual. We got Wildcat Stadium in Struthers.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most interesting stadium names.
Right.
The Wigwam. We're not going, we're not going to John Nappick's stadium. We're going to the Wigwam. Like, it sounds more like terrifying. Like, oh god, we got to go down there.
The big house.
Yeah.
Happy Valley. There's something there.
Yeah. I like it.
Not just a name. But either way, I think both these teams are going to look strong for this postseason. I think it should be a nice push for either one.
Yeah, I do too.
Next one up, Matt. It was the Holy War. What a war it was.
Oh, man. It's always
out the win over Mooney. And this is exactly what the game needed to be, wasn't it? 13-7. Mooney's defense, again, keeps them in it. But again, the offense is so terrible for Mooney that they can't score the ball. And this has been the story in every big game this season. Their defense gets them there, and the offense just can't finish it.
I mean, Ashton O'Brien, he's quite capable. He's got some good guys on the outside. I don't know. It just doesn't add up.
No, it doesn't. And this is a Mooney team that you just look at and you go time and time again, the opportunities have been there, and I worry about them now. They have Edison in round 1 on the road, and what's going to be a great stadium down there in Edison. I mean, I've only seen pictures. From what I've seen, it is a beautiful facility. And Mooney, they have a shot because Edison has not played a challenging schedule. It's a 10-0, but you kind of have a question. You have an asterisk next to that 10-0. I think they might have one opponent with a winning record on there. So, kind of similar to, Valley's 10-0 or a couple of these other teams that still have that little asterisk next to it. Hey, you're undefeated, but who'd you really go up against to make that undefeated look good?
Yeah.
But Cardinal Mooney, they have a chance with their defense, but unless Matt, this is like Iowa football. Unless their defense is scoring touchdowns, they might not, score more than once.
Yep.
They're the Iowa of the high school football.
Oh man. Yeah.
Ursuline, on the other hand, they have an 8-2 Hawken coming in round 1 of the postseason. I mean, you talk about just like you get a great season, a great run. You get the 3 seed, you get 2 home games, and round 1, they give you potentially the best 14 seed out there in Gates Mills Hawken, who obviously, 8-2, a light strength of schedule, which obviously hurt them. But it's a team that has scored 427 points in 10 games and has allowed just 193.
Oh, man. Okay.
Yeah, and they beat Crestwood in the final week 42-6. They did lose to Harvey, however, 50-44, and we saw what Cheney did to that Harvey team, that Painesville Harvey. And obviously, Harvey can beat this Hawken team. Cheney can beat Harvey. Ursuline can beat Cheney. When you kind of draw that line there, common opponents, it should be a game Ursuline goes favored into, but I wouldn't count out those Hawks over there. They're not a bad football team, and they can score. Both of their losses this season, 41-34 to Gilmore Academy, who is a 9-1 football team. They put up 34 points, allowed 41, and in the loss to Harvey, they put up 44 but allowed 50. It's going to be a high-scoring game against Ursuline, I think, is the one thing we can guarantee. So it's going to come down to how many touchdowns can DC Farrell throw through the air.
Exactly right.
It's going to be fun, though, but
for sure is.
Both of these teams, both Ursuline and Mooney, can do some damage, and Mooney could put a quick end to Edison's perfect season.
I think so, too. Yeah, I think they could. That's going to be a matchup.
we'll talk one more team here real quick. Austin Town Fitch.
Oh, I was just looking at him.
9 on Harding's defense, which is just astronomical. Most points I think Harding scored all season with 28, but what a great year it was for Austin Town Fitch. They get home games now here in the postseason. They're going to get 2 down the 4 seed, and in the first round of the postseason, they're going to get Mayfield, who comes in at 6-4.
Yeah, it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. Mayfield, they just don't have a defense, and we'll talk about this more Thursday and Friday, these playoff matchups. But the team who won 3 but then lost their last game against a decent Kenston, and their wins came early in the year, and they looked good at the time, getting win over Massillon Jackson, Kenmore, Garfield, Willoughby South, Eastlake North, and Madison, all teams that normally you would say those are good wins. But again, it's kind of like we saw in here. Some of our best teams had some really big down years. That was the same case out here in the Mayfield, Akron region, that you saw these teams go down. And Mayfield's one of these teams that you're like, okay, it was an average year for them. They're going to get quickly stomped out by Fitch, though, in week 1 of the postseason.
Yep.
But, Matt, why don't we go ahead and hand out the awards from this week? This week's Beast of the Week.
Isaiah Jones, man. 4 touchdowns in the first half.
Jeez.
He didn't play in the second half. So,
well, Matt, that's a guy up in Brookfield. They've kind of been waiting for him to have one of those big games. I mean, it's kind of been all season that you just wait for him to go out there and have those big games, because we all know he's capable. But I think against some of the lesser opponents, he doesn't go 100%. If they want to make a run in the postseason, it's going to come down, in my opinion, to Isaiah Jones going out there every week, determined to be the best guy. Matt, he has to have the same mindset we see with Vashawn Gurley at Valley Christian. Those 50-50 balls, no, it's 100-0. It's always mine. That's got to be his mentality in this final week.
Pulaski puts it right there. He did the whole game. And the last one didn't even come from Pulaski. They put Owen Shingledecker in, and he threw it up there, and somehow, some way, Isaiah caught it in the corner of the end zone to end the second half.
And that's why he's getting Division I offers, because we know he's capable. Now we got to go see him do it in this postseason against some.
I'll be there. Aiden Jones has stepped up. His brother, Aiden, the week before against Garfield, had 4 touchdowns. So the Jones brothers are going to step up in this game. Christian Davis had some big runs as well. No touchdowns in the last game, but, I mean, he got him in the areas where I work and take off.
Is going to be keeping up with the Joneses here in the
playoffs. Oh boy!
Watch out, Christian Davis going to have an absolutely electric first.
Calvin Pulaski didn't even have to take off for a run. He threw his.
Shout out to that offensive line, then.
Oh yeah.
Great performance. That's going to do it here for the Casual Sports Podcast on Your Sports Network. In case Matt isn't on the show, you can catch him in Brookfield this Friday for the postseason. You can catch me down in Boardman for Valley Christian. We'll talk about them on the show tomorrow as Mike Wolfgang Reed joins us. But I've been Alec Cabrera. That's Matt Morrison. This has been the show, Power Hour, coming up next on Your Sports Network.